Hello, and welcome to Husky Talk. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Procyon Partners. They are the top in the top 50 fastest financial growing firms in the country. They offer employee benefits. They specialize in wealth management, and any service you need, they are there for you. Retirement planning. When I make my millions of dollars, I will go to them, and they will do my retirement planning. Procyon is a proud sponsor of Husky Talk. Sean Rabinowitz, thank you very much. And I butchered your live read, but I'll make up for it. I would like to introduce our special guest from the PFL, Mr. Jim Tucker. Mr. Tucker, welcome to Husky Talk. We've had a few conversations, and I'm glad to finally be able to get you in the hot seat.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm happy to be here. It's good to get it scheduled. I apologize. I had to reschedule a few times, but
no, you guys are rolling. I get it. I totally get it. And I mentioned the last podcast that we did was the really the first PFL show that I watched, and I was just completely blown away by it. It was action-packed. It was fast-paced. The aggression, there was more of a sense of urgency. Like, I've been to several different MMA promotions. Tyler King, I've watched him fight. But watching PFL, like, to see it be completely different was truly a spectacle. I didn't know there was any difference, but the style, because of the point system and the value to finishes and everything, it won me over. I am a fan.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Thanks for watching, and thanks to you and Tyler and the team for covering it. It was kind of a great homecoming. I've been with the PFL for 4.5 years now, but this was our first event at Mohegan in Connecticut. I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, and we had a great turnout and had over 250 friends, family, UConn alum. A lot of the football guys came out. So, yeah, we're rocking and rolling, my man. Thank you.
So this right here is my co-host, Frank Cristiano. He was my high school football coach. He co-hosts a couple other shows with me, Moneyline being one of them. We do it in Worcester. It's funny that we're in Utica, New York, but we record in Worcester. Frank, avid MMA fan, and he actively was writing Senator Chuck Schumer to try to get the legislation passed in New York State for MMA to be legalized. He was putting on amateur fights for forever because they wouldn't allow pro fights. So he is also very excited and wanted to meet you and talk to you as well.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on. Yeah.
What's going on?
Hey, Frank, nice to meet you. If you were Steve's high school football coach, then you obviously inspire greatness. So it's good.
I actually, during the recruiting trails, I had to do a lot of lying to get Steve to where he was. Actually, if not, realistically, he would have been a Division IV player. But that's okay. We did what we could, you know.
Yeah, they did the best they could. They did the best they could.
So actually,
that's the role of the coach. So we understand.
Absolutely, all the time. My intervening with MMA in my life was I was an amateur promoter for 7 years in New York State.
Yeah, he was
in central New York. So I had a company called Heavy Hands Productions. And what we would do, it was so funny how, and actually that was going to be my question. I'm sorry I'm late to the show here. Unfortunately, I also run a couple of businesses.
He does.
And I'm caught halfway through both of them, trying to function of the day and then trying to get here and make promises to Steve to be able to talk. My question to you is going to be, and you may have already explained this online on the radio and I missed it, or on the podcast.
No, he didn't. We just started.
Oh, he did. Okay, great. It's just how did you get started in the involvement in MMA?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and this kind of ties into my time at UConn, because when I graduated in '98, but I was a football manager
Yes.
with the team from '94 to '98. That was under the run of Skip Holtz and Randy.
Larry Hare wanted me to say hello as well.
Larry's the man. I got to do some catching up, because you've had so many great personalities and friends in all the podcasts. So I'm working through it. But so I graduated in '98, and I studied sports marketing at UConn. Now, fast forwarding, I guess I'm old, but 25 years later, the sports marketing curriculum at universities is very sophisticated. Back then, I think it was still being developed, but I actually was
yeah, it wasn't offered a lot of places.
No, it was more of a mix of marketing and like some level of sports business. But now the kids that are coming out of college with sports marketing and management degrees really know their stuff and are ready to hit the workforce. But for me, I needed to do an internship after I graduated, and I was walking up to practice with Skip. And at the time, we had the field up on the hill up by the parking lot, and
yeah,
Skip said to me, he's like, Tuck, what are you going to do after college? And I'd like to say that I was forward thinking and I knew what I was going to do. And I was like, I don't know. I got to get an internship. And to his credit, and I always loved Skip. He was inspirational. But literally this gesture, he said, come to my office on Monday. So I went to his office on Monday, and he called up a marketing agent that he knew, who became my first mentor.
Oh, wow.
A gentleman named Eric Bechtel, who's been in sports for a long time. And next thing I know, I'm telling my parents that I've got an internship in New Jersey. I've graduated college, and this is my chance to get started at a sports agency. And my parents were like, "Oh, what's it pay?" And I was like, "It's a 6-month unpaid internship." And they're like, "Oh, what are you going to do?" I was like, "I got to go in there. I got to get hired. I got to make it work.
Pay your dues." Yeah.
And luckily, Eric was great to me. The company was called Integrated Sports International, which got rolled up into some of the biggest sports agencies in the world. But I was lucky enough to get hired on there. Met a lot of people, which is important in sports and building your network. It's a long-winded answer, but that got me into the sports game. And from there, I went to the NFL league office in New York, and then the NASCAR league office. And then let me get it right. My first venture in MMA was around 2010, 2011. I moved out to Vegas and I worked for the UFC. So I was a fan of the sport.
Oh, okay.
I was a fan of the business, and at that time, the trajectory was continuing to go up, and obviously MMA continues to be on one of the fastest growth trajectories. So that was my first run in MMA. Vegas wasn't really for me. I ran back to New York at the NBA league office, a stint out in LA with the Dodgers, and then the opportunity came up to join the PFL. So I moved back east, and we've been building this league from the ground up for me for the last 4.5 years. But we're in our 6th season now, and when I look at how far we've come so quickly, it's been incredible. But the best part is we're just getting started. So that's the path to me ending up in MMA.
Yeah, because a lot of these companies flame out, and you guys are getting stronger each year as you go. Originally, where were you from? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Branford, Connecticut, and
so you're a CT guy.
Yep. But a lot of my best UConn friends are Florida boys, just because of the recruiting.
Yeah.
So I'm back here. I'm back here in Stamford, Connecticut today.
Oh, okay.
See, I admire. I love the story that you told, because it's sort of like almost a rocket ship of where you've gone professionally, working in offices and working for different. Whereas
go again.
No. The struggle. Here's my thing. So I did no. So I started at MMA basically in 2008, and the reason I got started with it is I kickboxed amateurly for a guy here locally in Rome, New York, and I had 3 or 4 amateur fights. I fought on pro-am cards, so I was always the super heavyweight, the last fight before the pros would come out. And I love the fight game. But then I went to watch one of my friends fight in a stand-up Muay Thai event, but inside a 20-foot cage. So it kind of looked like 2 rats inside of a little, glass container, because the cage is so small. And I'm looking, and the lights are up high, and there's no music, and the announcer stunk. And I go, I can do a better job than this. So within a month, I incorporated myself. I bought a cage on Monster Cages and Rings. They dropped it off to my house here.
Yeah, which she still has. If you need an extra.
I do. If you need a 26-foot hexagon, it's in great shape.
They got the 10-sided one.
So I had this cage, and now I just start. So now I start going locally in my area, and I'm just promoting fights. I'm setting myself up at colleges. I'm setting myself up at our Utica Auditorium at the time, which capacity was like 4,000. I was lucky to get like 900 or 1,000 to come into the fight. I would do recreational centers,
car dealerships,
wherever I could set up to fight. We would be doing amateur fights, and I found it so difficult. I love doing it, but the problem is, obviously, to make money is very difficult. But number two, to get people to get involved, to be able to come actually watch the fights and come through the door is almost an impossible task at the amateur level, because they're always asking you, hey, who's fighting? And you're like, Bob's a mechanic, and Joe works at the hospital, and they're all amateurs, so they're working full-time jobs, and they're doing this because there's a passion. Some do it because they wanted to move on and progress into the pro leagues, but most of them are doing it because they just have a passion for the sport and wanted to fight. So that was my obstacle all the way along through. And in New York State, at the time I was doing it, MMA was illegal. Right? So it was only Muay Thai. So the New York State Muay Thai Association would sanction all our fights. So in reading the bylaws of the laws that prohibited New York State from doing, full MMA, I'm looking at it, and it never mentioned about the amateur game. It was always mentioned about the professionals. There will be no professional mixed martial arts combat in New York State. So what I did was I took one of my events and I moved it into Rome, New York, inside a hockey rink. And I got the U.S. Muay Thai Association to go along. They sanctioned it, but it was a full MMA fight. And people were like, you're going to get arrested. You're breaking the law. They're going to come for you right away. And number one, they didn't. My cousin was the chief of police in Rome, so they're not going to arrest me in my hometown. My cousin's not going to put the cuffs on me, so I'm good to go, right? I do the fight. It's over. The PR is huge. Television stations are there. Next thing you know, the next day, it's the Wild Wild West opened up in New York State. Every promoter that I knew that was doing Muay Thai opened up MMA right off the bat. So I was I was the wagon train guy coming through to set up MMA in New York. So I was a pioneer, correct.
You were the pioneer.
Great job on being the one to start that domino. You mentioned Rome, New York. I have to give a shout out the hometown of Jamie Harper. Maybe he's listening.
Jamie Harper, yeah, of course. Yeah, Harp is an avid listener. We always talk about the 98 team. I had Shank on, Shane Stafford. I mean, that season was just completely magical. And that was the year you graduated. So you saw the progression from the start when you coming in. Were you there right when Skip came for Skip's first year?
No, I believe he was always there when I was there, but I believe he was in place or on the recruiting trail a year or two before that. And then the last spring practice when I graduated, the spring workouts were with Coach Edsel.
Yes.
But I think that trying to think this season where they went down and played tough played against Georgia Southern. I was
in the playoffs.
So I flew down for that one and still kind of tagged along. But yeah, it was Skip during my reign.
Yeah, I remember it was so frustrating because they beat the national champs twice.
Correct.
Which is so rare.
Correct.
And then they get stuck at Georgia Southern against the team that runs a triple option.
Good Lord.
I talked to so many guys from that team who said they just completely changed their defense. And they believe to this day, had they just run their scheme, they would have had a better outcome. And it's disappointing. But to this day, that's the best team in UConn history. It's the only 10-win team, and it's the only team that won a playoff game. So it's something incredible to be a part of.
Yeah, great squad of guys, that's for sure.
Did you play sports growing up? Did you play sports in high school? Did you?
I did. I was lucky enough to be around the elite athletes at UConn, but my career peaked in baseball at the varsity level in high school. So I always found it was great to be a part of the brotherhood and the family at UConn. It allowed me to make some of my best friends for 3 years. Percy Price was my roommate, and Hoffman lived next door, and all the guys. So
Darby, yeah.
Everybody. I mean, we used to have the Yukon football golf tournament every year until COVID hit, and that was a great time to get together. But yeah, there's not much of a podcast if we're talking about my athletic career. That's for sure.
No. I didn't know if you played in high school or anything growing up.
Right.
But you were high school.
Listen, my time is limited. Let's ask some relevant questions here. Okay. All right. Okay. So now, so with the PFL question. What's the largest source of revenue for your league? Is it viewing, TV sales? Is it the revenue at the door? Is it that the owners have money and that's where they're ending up, financing with in the beginning? Like what? Yeah, the investor. Yeah, what do you see as where's the largest revenue stream coming in? Because most of these leagues, I was involved with Steve. We're trying to set up a startup professional football league back in 2009. And the problem was funding. We just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So I mean, where do your revenue streams come from to build your organization and to where it is now and to progress?
Bellator, like they did.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this isn't an officially sanctioned PFL interview, but I can definitely speak to it. I mean, on the investor and board side, we're very well capitalized with some of the greatest partners across the globe, but we're building a professional sports league, professionals in our name. So when you think about revenue streams, it basically follows the same model as all the other professional sports leagues. So at the top of the food chain is your TV distribution and media rights. Probably second would be your commercial sponsors and commercial business. And then you get into the other ancillary streams like event ticket sales and merchandise and licensing and all those other sort of things. So that's kind of the hierarchy there.
Yeah, and the other great thing about it is they allow fighters like Francis Ngannou. I mean, that was a huge coup. That really put you guys, that set you apart. I mean, you took the UFC heavyweight champion and you gave him a great deal. You allowed him to go box, and now he'll come back and probably eventually face your next heavyweight champion. Do you think that would be the plan down the line?
Yeah, that's what our CEO has spoken to, but yeah, I mean, the PFL has a lot of differentiators, but what you just spoke to is kind of our fighter first culture, right? Like we're solving for things in MMA, and we're flexible because we look at our athletes as business partners, right? And they have a stake in the game. And I think I sent you the announcement yesterday, but Francis is a great example. He's, he never been done before, undisputed heavyweight champ, fights out his UFC contract and, joins us. And we just announced, and it's part of the strategy, the announcement of the rollout of PFL Africa, of which Francis is the chairman. So giving back to his home country, developing talent in that market. We've already rolled out PFL Europe and PFL Middle East with more markets to come. And we're creating and professionalizing the MMA system of how do you become pro in MMA? Well, we're going to be mining talent and developing stars in those regional markets, all of which will ladder up to the PFL global season, which has the sports season format, that has the point system, that has the Final Four bracket system in the playoffs. And all of our fighters, both men and women, fight for equal prize winning of $1 million each on the PFL championship. So that's 6 title fights, $1 million each, which is a nice piece of change for our champions.
That's those are huge numbers. If you're looking at payouts that are right now in the UFC, which gets all the glory. I mean, bottom line, using Francis as an example, but not saying Francis as an example, do fighters come to you from the UFC and just say, man, you know what? They suck over there. I mean, they have some great contracts for fighters, but you know what? I mean, the average guy in there is struggling no matter what. I mean, he's, after 3 fights, you don't perform, you're out, you're dumped. The contracts start out really low for fighters.
And you get 5 fights. You have to sign for 5 fights.
3 or 5. It was when Matt Hamill was coming up, and I knew Matt Hamill. Matt Hamill was signing the 3 fight packages at a time, and it was basically, 15 and 15, 20 and 20. You know what? I mean, these weren't huge numbers. Granted, they were decent back then, but they're not real big numbers for guys that are. You got to pay. There's so much that goes into all the fighters, your trainers, your time, your gym, your everything. So the costs are high. What has been the response from fighters that may be coming over from that league to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't want to speak to the sentiments of fighters in the sense that, it's a topic that's pretty well reported on.
Right.
And I'm not on the fighter ops side, but
No.
what gives me great pleasure is the sound bites from our athletes that are in the PFL and how they speak about our organization, and about the fighter first culture and how they're treated. So it's always hard to make everybody happy, but the fighters on the PFL side and what they say publicly definitely speaks for itself here.
No, they're very happy. They're thrilled to be there. They like the arrangement, and the system being completely different, I think, sets it apart. And I wrote on the podcast I did with Tyler King, when you watch a UFC fight, sometimes if a fighter gets up on points, it looks like they're fighting not to lose. And PFL, it always seems like regardless, they're going for the finish. They're going for the win. And there's just another level of aggression. There's more offense, and they push. It's not nearly as slow. Like some of the UFC fights seem a lot slower. So you can, like for me, I saw a distinct style difference.
Yeah, from my side, I would love to say I thought of it. I didn't, but someone smarter than me did. And the PFL has taken the sports season format that exists in every other professional sport and applied it to MMA, which has typically been a promotional based sort of setup. So just like every other sport, it's sign the best athletes and teams and create the best teams in the world and have them go out there on the playing field and decide who becomes champion. So, for us, but to your point, Steve, the dynamics of it, I didn't realize until I started watching it play out, is the fighters have 2 fights in the regular season, one in the playoffs and one in the championship. But starting with that second fight in the regular season, and when you watch the broadcast, it comes through great. And George Greenberg, who's our head producer, who's got a gazillion Emmy Awards and done everything from Super Bowls and Daytona 500s, longtime Fox executive, it comes through in the broadcast in terms of the production, but also the scenarios that unfold, because going into each of those fights, one fighter has X amount of points, the other fighter has X amount of points. And you have scenarios where fighters are going into that fight and they need to win in the first round or by the second round.
Oh, yeah, they're going to be eliminated.
Because a win for just 3 points isn't going to be enough, because you get 3 points for the win, but you get 3 extra points if you win in the first round, 2 extra in the second, and 1 extra in the third. So to your point, it creates a ton of cool scenarios. And then the playoffs is the top 4 make the playoffs, and that's literally a bracket system that everyone can relate to, just like March Madness in the Final Four. So.
No, it's very strategic how it plays out. Can you talk a little bit about, because I know in the fall they're doing the Bellator series as well. What's that going to be like? Is it going to be the same format, like with a regular season of playoffs for titles as well? Or
right.
Separate?
So we acquired Bellator last fall. Incredible transaction. Greatly diversified and expanded our fighter roster. We're running the what we've renamed as the Bellator Champion Series throughout this year. There's a total of 8 events. About 6 of them are international. It's distributed on Max, the streaming service, but the next event that's coming up is in September in San Diego. So that format is still promotion based, and it goes back to the PFL solving for things, right? Like being in the PFL season and fighting 4 times in less than a year to win that $1 million prize is no easy task, right? You can ask any fighter, and there's fighters that have great talent that have star power that the season based format isn't maybe necessarily for them at whatever point they are in their career. So It gives us an opportunity to still have the star talent, to have them on the Bellator Champions Series, to have them showcasing their fights globally, but not necessarily competing in the season format with the PFL.
Now, your title, you're the Senior Vice President of Global Branding, correct?
Yep, Global Brand Partnerships.
Global brand partnerships. So like you had said, the Middle East, Africa, all the different areas, is that something you're involved with, trying to extend the brand worldwide?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've rolled out our regional sports league. We're monetizing those both in market as well as from a global partnership perspective. My role is basically to drive new commercial partners and revenue by building integrated partnerships. So we take a lot of pride in it. Our roster has grown to about 15 brands deep. We're partnering with the best companies in the world, everyone from Celsius to Budweiser to Bose to the Armed Forces and Air Force and many others. So the commercial business continues to be fantastic and grow. And part of it is because we have all the tools in the toolbox to build these programs for that partners want, right? So we own the broadcast. We own everything that you see in the broadcast. We own all the television commercial media. We own the events and the branding and the signage. We have our social content and digital channels and hospitality, and we package our fighters into partnerships too. So we've got a lot of tools in the toolbox to build the right programs for these Fortune 500 brands.
And you had mentioned this before with the UFC about training the up and coming fighters, going about doing that, paying them a salary. How do you do that and get them ready to go? Because you said that was something that they struggled with the young and up and coming fighters.
Well, young talent sometimes drifts. They don't have the direction. They don't have the financial means to be able to get where they need to get to. A lot of times these guys are discovered in a one fight scenario where someone or a scout or someone will see them and say, hey, let's get them signed, get them on a card and see what they have. Some are coming out of reputable gyms and put in the time and have been recommended by trainers, recommended by other fighters, have a resume under their belt of fights. And once in a while, you're going to get a diamond in the rough. But I think the exposure part is very difficult because this is where the PFL, this is such a valuable organization. There needs to be another option for fighters. I know Jim said they welcome the fighters like family. And I think that will go a long ways into the livelihood and the length of this of the franchise that you have, because bottom line, there's a great wealth of people training and looking to fight, but there are very few organizations out there where you can actually do it unless you're fighting in a mom and pop hack in the backyard somewhere. So I think that this the PFL has such great validity. And I think the way you're sounding, the way you're setting it up, Jim, honestly, it sounds like the durability is there for the long haul. This isn't a one and done. This isn't we're going to flip it and someone's going to buy us out. This is we're here. We're going to make our name, our brand, and basically we're going to look for fans to migrate over to us in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for those kind words, Frank. Yeah, I mean, it's better that there's more options for the fighters, but it's also great that there's more first-class content and fights for the fans, right? And it kind of goes back to the premise when the founders of the company looked at the business and the opportunity is when you look at global fan sports base, MMA is the third largest sport with 650 million fans. It's the third largest fan base, only behind soccer and basketball. And when you look at how many games there are out there for the fans of soccer and basketball or football, depending on what part of the world you're in, there's 5,000, 7,000 games a year. When you look at that large global fan base, and at the time you look at the number of events that the UFC is putting on, they've done an incredible job. They're the 10,000-ton gorilla, and they've blazed the trail, right? So kudos to everything that they've done. I was lucky enough to be a part of it early in my career, but there's room for more than one player in the MMA space, and there's room for more. There's room for more than $1 billion company in the MMA space, and that's what we're building. That's what we believe in. That's what we're creating, and it's good for the fighters to have options. It's good for the fans to have options, and for us, it's not a Coke Pepsi challenge, right? We're not asking fans to choose one or the other. Like, great MMA content by first-class organizations out there is better for everybody, and that's what we're building.
Yeah, and when we hit it to the point where everything is a pay-per-view for the PFL, be light and generous to us bar owners, because we're trying.
Oh, he complains about that all the time.
What is it? I mean,
UFC does it by capacity.
yeah, everyone does, when they're doing for pay-per-views, but sometimes it's outrageous. I can't. I'm in a small media market. I'm in a very small town. I can understand in New York City, if you're going to hit up the metro area and you're going to charge people $25 to get in the door just to see a fight late at night, that's fine. Or you're going to charge, $100 for a table if someone needs to sit and eat and all that. If I tried it one time, so I did pay-per-views for 14 years.
Yeah, you used to get every one of them.
And I had it in here, and it was always free, and they could always walk in and just food and drink. And I had a 300 seat capacity in my place. And bottom line, I said one time I tried to cover. I got to recuperate a little bit. Someone charged $5. I charged $5, and you thought the end of the world was happening. Yeah. People complained like you wouldn't believe. It was awful. So yeah, just I know you're going to hit it big time. I feel it in my bones. Maybe you can just give this one little bar here in Central New York a pass, and I'll be very happy.
Understood.
No, it's crazy because every show would be here and it would be free, and you get to sit at a table and watch it. Yeah, and then once you did the one cover, it was like the world was ending.
It was nuts, but I understand. It is what it is.
You don't have to answer this. I was just curious. You were a member of the UFC. Were you actively looking, or what was the draw that brought you to PFL? Would you say the opportunity, the being an upstart?
Yeah, it was funny. I was out in LA working for the Dodgers, and being an East Coast guy, I knew I wasn't gonna be in LA forever. When I have 3 beautiful nieces, my niece called me. I'm driving to LA, and she said, "Uncle Jimmy, why weren't you at my play today?" And I was like, I know I got to get back to the East Coast at some point. And it goes back to like sports network, and sports is tough to get into. And my advice to like anyone that's up and coming is like, do internships, do your best work, meet as many people as possible, because sports is tough to get into. But it's actually a pretty small community from a business standpoint. So I was lucky enough that there were some folks at the UFC that I had worked with earlier in my career, and the opportunity was there. So that's how I ended up at the UFC. But same thing when coming back to the Northeast, and when the PFL opportunity came up, is there were a couple people in the organization that I had worked with before. Our CEO actually was my boss back at the NFL. So just a lot of touch points, a lot of relationships, and I was lucky enough to join the organization 4.5 years ago.
Did you ever run into a female producer for the Ultimate Fighter shows back in 2009, Jamie Campione?
Not off the top of my head, but the name actually does sound very familiar.
And she's a local girl from our area right here. She was my UFC contact. Right. So that's the only reason I bring that up, is that's a name. But yeah, okay, just throwing it out there.
You mentioned the NFL. Did you have a desire, or did you ever want to actually work as a sports or an NFL agent? Because you'd said you interned with an agency.
Right. Yeah, it was funny. My working at the agency to start exposed me to all the various areas of opportunity in the sports business, right? There's sports sponsorship and corporate partnership, which is what I've kind of been in primarily. A lot of my friends are sports agents and represent some of the top athletes in the world. You can get into PR and event marketing. So going to that agency for me showed me all the different areas, and I was able to kind of gravitate towards that particular area in terms of corporate partnerships. But it's all intertwined because it all works together. A lot of times you're putting athlete deals into your corporate partnership deals and all that sort of stuff.
So, okay. So it wasn't just about going to the NFL to be an agent for the NFL. You go and you got to learn about everything, every sport, all the aspects, everything that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative that I was able to be at the NFL early in my career, because they're the best of the best. And to get inside that black box and understand at a young age how a number one sports organization operates and how the people there operate, I think that helped me apply those learnings to the other phases of my career. But it was a funny story. I mean, all my buddies gave me a hard time, because I was the manager and they were the athletes. But once I got the job at the NFL, it was 2001. So I'm showing my age, but I was able to go back to all my buddies and be like, hey, I made it to the league first before you did. So.
You're living out almost every young man's dream right now. I mean, I'm impressed with the resume right now, but I mean, the travels that you've had and what you said, I mean, that's a fantastic, for me, that would be my dream position, would be to in some kind of position of administrative power or executive decision in a sports league or a sports franchise. I mean, I think that's for me. I finished football in college. I graduated. I was going to stay in college and do my GA and become a coach. Football is in my blood. And then my father told me to come back and help him in the restaurant one summer. And like Godfather 3, I kept trying to get out. They kept pulling me back in. So bottom line, that's what happened with my life and direction. But I love the story. It's really impressive. And where you've put yourself right now to be on the stage, not just nationally, but internationally, that's really big, man.
Yeah,
kudos to you.
And I went to Worcester, and I got to see Steve Darby's place. We bought a bunch of his beer, and we brought it back, and Frank selling it now.
Had him give me 10 cases of beer, and I put it in my bar over here, so I'm starting to sell it. I got some Connecticut beer over here in New York. It's fantastic.
Nice, that's fantastic. Yeah, Darby's doing well, and he
loves you.
He loves his beer too. So that's a match made in heaven.
So the shows, you did a show at Mohegan and Foxwoods, was it?
We were just at Mohegan this year.
It was Mohegan, okay. And that was the one I think you invited me to. Was that the 28th?
Yeah, that was June 28th. Yep.
Yeah. That's impressive. That's impressive. And the regular season, now it starts back up in August. The event that's tomorrow, that's over in Saudi Arabia, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And that's what you were talking about, like expanding, going into the Middle East.
Yep. Yeah. So the rollout of those regional sports leagues in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and more to come, follows the same sports season format to crown a champion in those markets. And and those folks can punch their ticket to the PFL global season. But from a global season standpoint, we fire back up with the 3 playoff events in August.
Right.
We'll be August 2nd in Nashville, August 16th down in Hollywood, Florida at the Guitar Hotel Hard Rock, and then Friday, August 23rd in DC.
Okay. And then I wondered, when they win the championship at the end of the season, going into the following season, do they keep or defend the belt at all, or it starts all over again and you win it?
Just like the Kansas City Chiefs are the Super Bowl champion, they start at 0 when the NFL season opens in 9 weeks. Same thing with our champions. Obviously, they're $1 million richer and they're the returning champ, but they start the season just like everybody else.
Oh, okay.
I've got a question. So for the event in Saudi Arabia, do the cultural differences make a difference in your presentation of the event? Are there things that are restricted? Are there things that you have to curtail? Is there some sort of, not handcuffs, but you know what I mean? Do you have to oblige by a certain set of rules?
Yeah, I mean, we have to think through those things as it relates to any market nuance. So, there's certain products that we may promote here in the U.S. in events that we wouldn't necessarily be allowed to or promote, in Saudi, and that's relevant for all markets across the world, depending on different directions and markets.
Right. So that makes a difference. That international market is sort of a challenge in a way to present it in the correct fashion and make everybody happy.
I mean, I think it's more of presenting an authentic product to the people in that market that resonates the best with them. But yeah, we have to be aware of all those nuances.
Jim, this is Tyler King. Tyler had wanted to say hello.
Jim, hello.
Tyler, what's up, man?
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Good to see you.
Yeah, he's a big fan. We've been doing the MMA podcast, and he's got more knowledge than anyone. That's I've seen everything that he's done, and I love watching him get knocked out because he used to knock me out on the football field all the time. So,
Steven, that was so kind of you.
It's good to get a little bit of revenge, just a minor revenge. Jim, I wanted to ask you, the UFC, they ended up with that lawsuit, the $2.8 billion that they got it was a settlement. The judge ended up rejecting it, and now they have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out that, it was back pay for fighters. Do you have, just in your opinion, how do you think that's going to play out?
Honestly, I really don't know. I'm sitting on the sidelines with my popcorn, kind of following it like everybody else. I mean, it's been ongoing, but
10 years.
Yeah, definitely. So I think where that lands remains to be seen. I know it's kind of a non-answer, but I really don't know.
Yeah, no, I was always curious because it was such a big deal to get the settlement. Then they said it wasn't enough. And then the judge actually threw it out, which I thought was crazy. After 10 years of trying to get something, they got nothing. And now they got to go back to the drawing board. And now I wanted to ask you about UConn. We win 2 men's national championships. We are in the red in the athletic department. It blows my mind to this day that you win 2 national titles and you're in the red. What do you think has to be done for them to get over the hump? Do they, because they want to stay, they're dead set on staying in the Big East for basketball, and a team will not take them for football without basketball. Do you think it has to get to a point where they're going to have to drop the Big East in basketball and just go to the ACC for football and basketball and all the other sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely one of the considerations, but I'm not necessarily an expert. I mean, number one, I was just happy to see Coach Hurley continue to bleed blue and stay with us and get rewarded with a great contract. Because when I first saw the rumors of the Lakers, part of me was like, man, how can you pass that up? So to keep him in town has been incredible. I think when you look at the college sports landscape, it's in a time of transition, right? With NIL and everything else that's going on, and you look at the Pac-12 and that's kind of been decimated, and
the Pac-4, Pac-4 now,
Pac-2 or whatever it is. So, and not throwing stones at them by any means, but it's literally seemed college sports has always been a professional sport, but it's even more a professional sport now, and I think that's where you're going to see the dynamic in terms of schools that need forward-thinking business leaders to operate the university and organization almost like a professional sports league, because, or exactly like a professional sports league, because those revenue streams in terms of TV deals and everything else are all the same revenue streams that drive professional sports business.
Yeah, we talked about that, especially the guy from Florida, the quarterback from Florida who left. He didn't enroll in school, goes to Arizona State and sues Florida for his NIL money.
Right. Well, everything's professional. Everything has an attorney. Everything has a dotted line on it now. It's different. It's a different game.
Were you there when Dave Schumann was there at all?
Yep.
Yeah, Schumann. He mentioned it. He says currently right now there's 2,000 players in the transfer portal that don't have a home. Everyone thinks by joining the transfer portal that they're going to end up going somewhere, and they found nowhere. And they have the option to go back to their team, but how do you go back to your team after you said, I don't want to be here anymore, let me go?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is actually the first time I've thought it through, but I personally, I like the compensation for athletes. I like the flexibility for people to move and be in programs and make the best out of their opportunity wherever it may be. But I think at the moment it's a little too free flowing in terms of the ability to transfer, and one team can look entirely different the next year with the players. When I think about professional contracts, and when people sign, they need to sign for usually a minimum number of years. So I think it's all good, but just thinking out loud, maybe it doesn't need to be as free flowing, and maybe those decisions to change, need to be scaled back a little bit. But at the same time, the dynamics of the teams and the needs and the opportunities do change every year. So maybe you need to have that flexibility, but it's definitely changing quickly with probably more changes to come.
Yeah, and I think that's why some of the coaches we saw retired as well. Like Nick
Without a
Saban.
doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah,
I mean, the landscape is not only broader, but it's confusing.
yeah,
The landscape is
yeah.
confusing,
No, I
confusing
know.
to a staff, confusing to the players, confusing to the school administration, the AD down. I mean,
Yeah,
what do you
there's
do?
no rules,
You're
yeah.
playing
No,
on
no.
you're on pins and needles every year.
I'll jump in there too. Like Jim, what you just said, it's basically a professional sport now. But like you said, when the guys sign a contract, it's a certain number of years. Like they're locked in for at least a certain amount of time, and the team rather has a little more say in the matters as far as players moving. You're right; it's definitely way too free flowing. Thank you for actually educating me on that a little bit.
Tyler, it's not very hard to educate you, but that's okay.
Steven,
We
stop
still
it.
love you. We still
All right,
love you.
so now I'm going to educate you on MMA, Steve. So, Jim, I was listening in while I was driving back from my appointment. You were talking about just how the viewership of mixed martial arts is massive. Talking about
I
being
couldn't believe that either.
the third most watched sport. So, just what is the strategy as far as the PFL goes right now? Putting on more events. Like you're talking about expanding globally. The news this week was Francis Ngannou being named the president of
Africa.
PFL Africa. So, are you guys looking to make a more broad, like, I want to say a broader approach than the UFC has taken as far as implementing the sport, developing the sport worldwide? And with that, are you like say the next 2 to 5 years, are you looking to put on the number of events like that's comparable to what the UFC is doing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, and we talk about it internally, but the easiest way to frame it is we're building the Champions League of MMA, right? So we've got our global season, we've got the Bellator franchise, we've rolled out the 2 and now 3 regional sports leagues with more to come. So when I look back to when I started, we were at 10 events a year, right? The PFL was in its 2nd season or 3rd season, just getting rolling. When we look at
that's what it was, the PFL or the World Series of Fighting?
No, PFL was established in 2018, and I joined. I joined late 2019. But when you look at that event schedule, it was 10 at that time. We're upwards of 30 events now around the world with more to come. So when you look at that growth just over the past 4 or 5 years, I get excited about thinking of where will we be in 5 more years in terms of the rollout of those regional sports leagues, in terms of the number of events, in terms of the global TV distribution and the fan base, and in terms of the commercial partners that will continue to bring into the fold, because we're talking about the best of the best in business, the biggest brands out there, which is great because you guys know how MMA started and legalization and all the stuff that's in the rearview mirror. And when you think about these athletes, and Tyler knows it, these are elite athletes in the world that are dedicated to their craft, right? And when you look at the Olympics, every element of MMA is an Olympic sport. When you look at judo and boxing and wrestling, etc. So MMA should be an Olympic sport at some point, right? So that's the sport keeps evolving, it keeps developing. It's premium, it's at the top of the food chain now, and part of it and part of our job is to continue to educate corporate America about the opportunity, because it's a young, desirable fan base, it's a global fan base, and the exposure and opportunities and ability to build programs and drive businesses there. So that's what we're working on.
How about this slogan right now? And maybe I can get a little cut if it goes out. So you could say PFL, one continent at a time.
Global domination.
Global domination. That's
Why
it.
not?
It's fantastic.
But, like, you think that MMA could be like a high school sport? They could find a way to regulate it and make it a high school sport, or make it a college sport.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah,
I don't see why not. I mean, every other sport is, people are training at a very young age, and whether it's affiliated with the school or not. But like the tenets of mixed martial arts are just so applicable to life and creating good people, right? It's not just about fighting, right? Like obviously that's the craft, but the training that goes into it, the discipline, the respect, like all of those elements are very positive attributes of what the sport represents. And I think it's important for people to remember that.
I agree. Tyler, you're shaking your head. Did you have something
I
to
was
say?
what do you mean shaking my head? I was agreeing with Jim. Excuse me. Jeez.
Oh, okay. I was just checking. I wanted to make sure I
All
wasn't.
right,
Cutting,
but thank you for setting me up for my.
I wasn't
next
cutting you off.
Thank you for setting me up for the next question I was formulating. Jim, feel free to say no comment to this one. Have you any opinion or anything as far as Dana White's comments this week that he would consider some sort of co-promotion for a large event, possibly Francis Ngannou versus John Jones?
He did say that?
Yeah, I've heard it from I've just heard it through a couple podcasts, few stories that I've read, that Dana was quoted saying he's not closing the door on it, sort of thing. Like he's softened his stance on it.
Right. I hadn't heard the comments. I'd like to keep my PFL job, so I won't be
That's
commenting
exactly what
in
I thought.
public. But I will say, from a fan perspective, that's a fight that the fans want to see. So if there's a path for that, as a fan, I'd be excited to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I firmly agree with you. But I mean, to take the UFC champ, and he got his 2 boxing matches, and he made his money, and now he's going to come fight for you. I think that's incredible, and I think you have so much good young talent. That was the other thing that stood out when I saw the card on the 28th. Young talent, they fight hard. It's fast paced. It's aggressive. That's the draw. And I had no idea it was the 3rd largest sport, most watched sport in the world. I had no idea. No idea it was like that. And what would you say like the top other countries are for it?
I mean, I think I think you have to look at where a lot of the fighter talent is coming from.
Well,
whether it be Brazil or Russia, et cetera. But we're seeing that there's an opportunity for the sport in basically every country around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Cedric Doumbé fighting with us, and he sold out I think $15,000 to $17,000 capacity arena in Paris. So those are things that I look at as a fan and say, wow, like this is incredible.
Wow. And I know for your job, you're in Stanford now. Do you get to go on the road often? Do you go to these other countries and meet with people and try to get the corporate sponsorships and all that?
Yeah, definitely. I've had some opportunities. I haven't been across to our international events yet, but there'll be plenty of travel coming. But yeah, I'm at most of our events with our existing partners and showcasing the sport to new partners that are potentially looking to get in business with us.
Wow, that's incredible.
Hey, open invite for you guys. You want to get out to Nashville, South Florida, or DC in August? Just let me know.
I would love to go.
We could jump in a car and go. Why not?
See, no. Now I don't have to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
That would be awesome. And Tyler, you're fighting on the 20th, right? The grappling thing?
I have a grappling match on Saturday, bud.
Saturday, yeah. I would love to go. It's just, again, it's a different atmosphere. I love the style, and when you're paying $80 to watch a UFC pay-per-view and you can watch the PFL, for the first time watching it, I was completely blown away. I had no idea what I was getting into. So I'm so happy that it's
Steve.
What?
You just right. Can I ask you? Well, I want to ask another question. You keep reminding me. Thank you so much, Jim. How much longer does the ESPN deal run?
I don't know. It's a multi-year contract, so no worries there.
Yeah, it's UFC's deals up.
Has how do you feel about even from when I was fighting for the old entity 2016, it was top-notch production value. Do you feel like much has changed since you've brought ESPN on board? And will we continue to see this upward trend?
Yeah, I think definitely an upward trend. I mean, when you think about ESPN is owned by Disney, they're the worldwide sports leader. So to have a sport like MMA and the PFL on the worldwide sports leader, that's additional validation that of where the sport sits and how it continues to grow. So yeah, and you know, when you watch our production, we talked about it earlier, just the way the sport's presented, the PFL smart cage, the data and analytics that are being pulled from the smart cage, it just gives fans you know, more information real time and creates an awesome viewing experience.
Is that where you were talking about, Tyler? Something with the punching, they can tell how strong your punch is.
Steven, I gotta give you so much credit. I actually keep setting up my questions. Thank you so much. I was gonna say, Jim. Obviously, I don't know.
Jim's gonna shoot me, but okay.
Stop. Jim, I'll be as gentle as possible. I promise. Back when I competed, they approached me before the fight and asked, "Hey, can we tape this sensor? You won't even feel it." Da-da. I was just, no, I don't want an extra hunk of whatever in my whatever. Have you heard? I don't know, because you're probably you're very much less on the
He's on the corporate side. Yeah.
Yes, I understand that, Stephen. Thank you. Do fighters embrace that sort of technology, or do you find a resistance from it?
I haven't come across it. All of our gloves have a proprietary smart chip in the glove.
Okay,
which is helping us pull
that is much easier.
Yeah, exactly. So it's they're in the gloves, and that's where we get a lot of the data from, the punch speed and other things. So, it's designed in a way that it's not intrusive. Nobody knows it's there. It's not impacting the competition or anything like that.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So we have events coming up in August. Okay, we can. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put a link to the website, the show notes. You said August 2nd was the one that it starts up again.
Yep,
and then it runs all the way through.
Yep, the 2nd, the 16th, the 23rd of August. And if you can't get there, just tune into ESPN or ESPN Plus.
Okay, and then the Bellator series starts in the fall.
Continues in the fall. Yep.
Continues in the fall. Okay. Perfect. We can put all that in. That'll be, we can get all that in the show notes, and we'll give you guys a lot of coverage.
What else? Awesome. What else do you have to say? He's living his best life.
No, I can't believe it. No, it's a great setup. It's a great league. I'm so happy that you're a part of it, and it's good for UConn. You're a UConn guy, and you are part of the '98 team, and even in the training room, Larry Harris loves you. Darby loves you. Nobody said a bad word about you. So I was really excited to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you. And listen, hey, congratulations on what you're building with Husky Talk. Honestly, I think
we're getting there.
You know, there's a brotherhood out there, and really enjoying the shows in terms of, like, even people that I know and see often, to see them in the setting and to hear stories about things that I didn't know about them. Like, you've definitely, hit on something special of people that you're kind of reuniting from 20 to 30 years ago. So keep up the good work, man. I really appreciate it.
You hear that, Frank?
Yeah. Thank you for reading that promo there for him, Jim, right now. The check's in the mail.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, thanks for the time. It was really, really great to catch up, and keep up the good work.
Thank you for giving us an hour of your time. Thank you for educating us on the PFL. We greatly appreciate it. For Tyler, the Marauder King, and my co-host Frank Cristiano.
Steve, I just want to say, hey, Frank, sorry for the intrusive questions.
You don't ask intrusive questions, Tyler. You have a filter. You have a great filter.
You are fine.
For Jim Tucker.
Clearly.
The Senior Vice President of Global Branding, thank you for being with us. And remember, I'm the best podcast host in the universe,
really?
Steve Cully. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw them back at life.